3, 2, 1. What is going on, everybody? You are watching the Ash on Comics channel. My name is Ash, and I have a great co-host, partner in crime with me today, Skip and Tosh. He has blessed me with his presence. I've been wanting to collaborate with Skip for a long time. He's a busy dude, and we have a great show for you lined up and in progress. Is a work in progress show. We're building it up, and we're inviting you to join with us on the ground floor and build it up. Skip, my man, how are you doing tonight?
Feeling really good, man. Excited. We've been talking about this a lot and, figuring out how we can do it. And when we do, do it, what it will be. We got all that nailed down, man. And today's the day. And the time is now. So I'm just excited, man, to be with you, to be with everybody in the chat joining us, to jump in on these indie books, man. And, maybe uncover some stories that people haven't been reading and really been missing out on. So I'm excited, man.
Awesome. I have been looking forward to this since we started talking about it. It's like it's kind of like Christmas. Like you got to wait for those days to come. And it's like, now it's showtime. And today's been so hectic. I've been like scrambling just to get every little last minute thing so I can even do this tonight. But here we are. It's live. And thank you everyone that's in the chat with us. Showing your love and enthusiasm for comics. I guess this is like our pilot episode. We don't even have a full name yet. You'll notice it's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. That's a placeholder. We're looking for a better name. We're still trying to work on it. We just haven't found anything quite yet. If you guys have any ideas, throw them at us, man. Just spitball them. I'm sure something will stick. And oftentimes it comes from the most unlikely of places. Since this is our first show, we're kind of getting things off the ground. No one knows who we are. Well, some people know who we are, but we're hoping that other people are going to join us that don't know who we are. Skip, who are you? What's going on with you? And why are you into comics? Tell me about yourself a little bit for the audience.
Absolutely. Some people may know me from doing some shows over there with Wes on the Thinking Critical channel. A few shows more recently, but especially earlier on, I was really active on there. But if you hadn't seen me there, you'll see me there more often. But even before that, I've had a very long background in being a part of podcasts, producing shows, producing podcasts, live streams, and all of that. So tons of hours talking about various different things. But of course, for such a long time, one of my favorite things to talk about were comics and comic books. That kind of has sent me on quite a whirlwind, meeting a lot of different people online, in person, some of my favorite artists and writers, on up until, people that have become some of my favorite people to talk to, throughout the week, like yourself and Wes and Breen and all those other people. So comics is just a great thing, man. Loved them since I was a kid. I was born in '85. Of course, a few years after that, the Batman boom from the Burton Batman happened.
Oh yeah.
Of course, we're coming into a lot of people's favorite period with Watchmen and The Dark Knight Rises and all that stuff coming up. So naturally, comics were there for me. Get them on the spinner rack, fall right into my lap. Mom, give me some allowance. I'm grabbing all sorts of books, man, and it was cool. Was into them for a really long time, about over 20 years. I would say, of comic book reading experience. And it was even greater as I got older, got a little more money in my pocket. I can buy all the comics I want and mama can't say anything. So ever since then, man, just been buying them up, reading them, and just looking around for people to talk to about them, and running into someone like you, my man Ash, and coming into a show like this, man, is kind of, a culmination of all those years of passion, excitement, reading, weeping.
Right.
Comics make you feel all sorts of things, man, and now has opened up a whole community for so many of us online, especially in these times when we're not able to get together as much in person. So, man, what a journey that I've been on with comics, and now even in the phase where I'm writing some. So this is really cool, man. I'm just happy to be here with everybody and go on this journey with you, my man Ash. And what about you? You've got a long history with comics, man.
I have a long on and off relationship with comics. I started collecting comics not too long after you were born. So, I'm starting to feel old here, but I got into the comics about the mid 80s. The first comic I ever actually bought was X-Men 162, the famous cover with Wolverine turning into a brood on the cover. But the first comic I bought when I was like going to be like collecting comics, not just like a random, I walk into a 7-Eleven, bought a comic, but I was like, oh, I'm going to start buying comics, was X-Men 210, which happened to fall in the month of the big Marvel 25th anniversary. That was in the mid 80s, I think 86, 87. I don't remember the exact time. And I just fell in love with X-Men. Just was boom, boom, just buying X-Men comics for almost a decade. And I bought them forwards and backwards, and I just love that. To me, to this day, X-Men has been my jam. I became a Marvel fanboy because of that. You know, it's like X-Men was Marvel, so you'd get to see these other characters guest star in X-Men, you know, like Doctor Doom, who became one of my favorite characters of all time. And so I just became a Marvel guy. And I knew about DC. I mean, who doesn't know Batman? And you're right, man. 1989, you couldn't spit without hitting Batman. You know, like it was all over the place. And I just, Batman was cool. Everyone, Batman is like the kind of the guy everyone likes. Batman, like to some degree, even if you're like not a Batman guy, you're like, okay, you roll your eyes. He's kind of cool. You're like, Superman was a guy that was around too. He was a big guy. They had the movies, of course, in the 70s, and those were big. I love those Superman movies. I watched.
So good.
Yeah, I mean, probably not these days, but I mean, as a kid, I even liked Superman 3 and 4. And I know that's criminal, but but I didn't ever care about the comics. To me, DC always seemed like your dad's comics type of thing. It felt a little old. Right. It just never appealed to me. And then fast forward to today, I got out of comics in the mid 90s, right before the crash happened. You know, I was in my 20s. Life was changing. I don't even remember why. I do remember X-Men kind of going downhill because Claremont retired, Jim Lee and all those guys left, and they formed Image, and X-Men just wasn't the same anymore, and it took a lot of the wind out of my sails. And then, of course, like I said, my life changed and moved. I just moved on, and I never lost my love for comics. In fact, I kept my ear to the pavement. I would come back every now and then to get some things, listen to other people who were into comics still, and be like, hey, what's going on in comics? Oh, this is okay. Right. And it wasn't until about 2017 that I ran into with social media and things, I came across the whole drama of comics that was going on at the time. And I discovered some YouTubers and, just that passion of them talking about comics, and not just about what they were pissed off about what's going on, but what they were loving and all the fond memories they had. And it just rekindled that. And it made me really miss that camaraderie of sharing that love with people. So I decided to dip my toes back in. Batman White Knight was coming out at the time. And I was like, you know what? I don't really like the face of Marvel, so I'm going to try my hand at DC Comics. It'll be like exploring comics all brand new again, like when I was discovering Marvel. And I had a blast. I genuinely did, and it was great. And I was kind of poo-poo Image. They're kind of the foo-foo comics that it's not for me. I want my superhero books. But over time, over the past several years, as I've been doing this and talking to people be like, hey, Ash, you should check this out. You should check that out. And I got to tell you, this is why we're here today, because I have fallen, deeply, in love with indie comics. Superhero and capes are always kind of my thing, but that doesn't mean it's the only thing. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I like comedy. I like all sorts of things. And these indie comics are presenting some really cool creative ideas, and more importantly, the quality that I myself, as kind of a snob, kind of expect. I want to see greatness. I don't want mediocrity. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I've just my time's evolved, and I'm just like, man, indie books. I'm so excited. And I want to share them with other people, because I know there's a lot of people like me that are into comics because either Marvel or DC or both, and that's where they grew up, and maybe their parents or dad or mom turned them on to these, and but they don't know what's out there. They're like, right, these, I saw them on the shelf, but what is it? Like, yeah. So I guess that segues into like the next thing. What's the show all about? And so I guess I'll just start off real quick. I'll let you elaborate. But we started this idea of Skip and I came together, kind of the similar love of indie comics. Like we're like, oh, we're reading these, and some of these indie books I read, Skip turned me on to. Like he's like, you should check this out, and I'm like, oh, and it's really fun. And was like, let's get together and talk about this. Like I want to geek out. Those who've watched my show before in the past, other things, I can be very salty and get up, but this is not what this is about. This is the opposite. This is the sugar. We just want to geek out and have a sweet tooth. And what was your thoughts on this? How did you come to want to do this, and what's your vision of this show?
It was very similar, man. Very, very similar. Just, looking for a place to kind of outlet this newfound passion that I found for these books that seemed to kind of fit me a little bit more where I was at that time in comics, coming back. And yeah, same thing, hopped on the DC train, hopped on the Marvel train. But, I had some extra money in the budget, and, it's like guy who owns a comic shop, like, throw something at me, throw me a curveball. I'm that kind of guy. And, he did. And it was, gosh, what was the very first one? I honestly don't remember now. But with that, started to just see like, oh yeah, more and more, these are really hot Paper Girls and Tokyo Ghosts and all this other stuff. So, naturally, like we said, it all came together. And, people can expect for us to continue to, share indie books that we're reading. Again, indie sales, if you take a look at them, they kind of don't circulate as much. But we would like people to kind of open up their capacity to kind of bring in more books because, like we said, we're attached to those characters and everything. And, here and there, we get some good writers that, tell some great stories. But Ash said the cream of the crop. And when people are able to kind of tell some of their own stories and there is nothing holding them back from it, we get some of the most heartfelt or some of the most thought-provoking stories out there, and we're going to bring some of the ones that we come across to you, and in hopes that you engage with us and bring some of yours to us, and just let this have this thing grow. So again, we want to thank everybody for joining us. This is the pilot episode. Hang on, it might be a bit of a bumpy ride. We will get you to your destination as we fly high in the friendly sky of these indie books, and I'm excited to be here with my man Ash to get it going. So Ash, what are we up to first? What's on the docket?
Real quick, before we hit that first thing, I also wanted to just have a little caveat here. Because this is a pro indie book show, it does not in any way mean it's anti-mainstream book. We still love our Marvel and our DC and stuff like that, but this is just sort of an underappreciated section of comics that don't get all the attention, and that's why we're just sticking and focusing on this. There's so many people. You can go out and find the love of DC Comics and the love of Marvel Comics. They don't need representation. So that's keep that in mind as we go on. So where we're going from here is, Decorum. Decorum is a book that you and I both read, and it's something we decided to kind of build off of on the show. We kind of thought of an idea of doing a fan cast about a book that's ongoing month after month, and just like a TV show fan cast, of those of you who might have heard of like TV shows like The Talking Dead, which they geek out about each episode of The Walking Dead, it's a similar vein to that, where we're just going to be reading this book every month and then shooting the shiz about it, like, hey, what did you think about this new issue? Like, what's going on? And this is a perfect book for us because we're both reading it. And it's because it's a very challenging book. It's a Jonathan Hickman book. And if you've never read Jonathan Hickman, well, first of all, you need to. And second of all, like, he's just super, super thought-provoking, and he's very challenging to read. Now, admittedly, that's going to make it difficult and not necessarily for every reader out there. Some people just want little silly books. Some people want heartfelt, emotional books. And everyone's cup of tea is going to be a little bit different. But this is something where Skip and I, your little Venn diagram crosses over. And we just thought it was a good book to start off with. We got another book that's also going to be featured, which is going to be Firepower. that'll be
Mm-hmm.
talked about. And this is going to be a bi-weekly show, so you can come back and we're going to talk about that. But for those of you who are like, you know what, Skip, Ash, I don't read those books and they're just not my cup of tea, we are going to be talking about some other books to a lesser capacity. And we're going to be doing a trade. Every 2 weeks, we're going to be having a trade that's featured. They're going to tell you in advance to give you the opportunity to read it if you haven't already, and come join us on the show. And we're going to geek out about it. And the trades that we're doing, all the ones that are lined up so far, I have never read. So they're all going to be new for me. Skip has read some of them, well, probably most of them. But that's an opportunity for you, too, to be like, well, I haven't read this, and then I want someone I can talk to. Because sometimes the bad thing about back issues, you know, for me, Skip, is like, well, they're fun stories, but everyone's already read them. You go, hey, I just read this story where everyone's like, yeah. We read that 2 years ago. You're like, oh. So we'll announce that later. So starting off here, Decorum. First, Skip, tell us about Decorum. What's this book?
Absolutely. You know, I did really enjoy what they have up here on the screen as it says for Decorum. There are many assassins in the known universe. This is a story of the most well-mannered one. Quote, manners are a sensitive awareness of the feelings of others. If you have that awareness, you have good manners, no matter what knife you use, end quote. And I can tell you that caught me right out the gate. As someone who comes from a family who's all from the South, manners was a very, very important, very big thing. But I just thought about it, Decorum, talking about manners. But then when you flip over into the book and we find out that it is a multi-part story, it is part assassin guild with a newcomer coming in, you know, to be trained and to go through it and to serve a certain purpose. While we also have a very abstract story being told, which seems like it's much farther in the future, with a would-be messiah, you know, supposedly coming into the world, heralded far before at a time, and a very abstract two different groups warring back and forth of when is that messiah gonna come, how it's gonna come, and potentially whose purpose it might serve more than others. And when you kind of bring those things together, like Ash said, with Jonathan Hickman's wild and vivid imagination, as well as the art from who was very new to me, Mike Huddleston, who I was not very familiar with. Um, it's the makings of a very, very interesting book. So that's kind of how we're that's kind of the world that and the mindset you kind of have to get yourself in for this book. We'll catch you guys up a little bit. So and as in case you didn't catch us saying it, this will be a spoilery section. So hopefully you've read Decorum. If not, hopefully a little bit of what we tell you will get you into it. And we're not going to spoil every single thing, but there will be things spoiled. So
Yeah,
again, there's
major
another warning.
spoilers for this show. But that's the idea. Is like, we talked about this. What are we going to do? We going to spoil, not spoil? And it's like, look, the idea is that you're reading this, or you're insistent that you're not going to read it, right? If we're
Right.
sitting here geeking out about it and like, look at this and look at that, and you're like, nope, still not going to read it, well, not going to be spoiled. And if you do change, you go, you know what? You guys have convinced me. I want to read this book. Well, we only spoiled a handful of issues because it's still coming out every month. So going forward,
Right.
you won't be spoiled, hopefully.
Indeed. And you'll be reading it with us and coming back so we can all talk about it together. But in this case, what we've got so far, it started out with an indigenous people kind of being taken over by an unnamed, an unknown force. A lot of technology being deployed on these indigenous people, and they were easily um, overcame and ravaged. But within the chief's mind, there was this sort of egg, and that's what that unknown, highly advanced, technologically advanced group kind of came out of the sky and got. And as they did, they kind of went on about their way. We cut from that and some incredible art over into the other world. And then this is where we get to our first character who we come to know. It is a young woman. Her name is Neha Noor Saad. And actually, let me go back. Sometimes I gotta I gotta get in close.
Yeah,
It's a
the
very
names in
particular
this are
name.
challenging too.
Very, very
Especially when you're
challenging.
trying to remember them for a podcast. You're like,
Oh yeah, no, it's tough. Okay, but yes, it was Niha. So Niha is a courier. We find out early on that her family has essentially kind of been frozen, is in some sort of preservation that is very expensive. She's on her lone fixed income, doesn't make a lot of money, but was getting by being a courier. Had gotten a gig by the normal sleazeball kind of guy, giving her just enough work to kind of keep her going and have to come back. But ultimately, she delivers a package to this place. As she gets there, another person arrives right along with her. The main person that they were delivering to, lets them know, hey, that package wasn't for me. And then this new mistress, mystery woman, this femme fatale, says, no, it was for me. One of the coolest fights that I've ever seen happen with one of the coolest weapons I've ever seen in a book. And ultimately, the femme fatale character, after dispatches just about everyone in there, um, offers Niha to basically kind of come along with her, because she's going to give Niha an opportunity to make some money, because she sees that she has potential for her own profession that she's a part of, which is being an assassin. From there, Niha goes and then begin reluctantly enlists in that school. She is very much not any type of killer at all, but it's a really good school with really good teachers. Let's say that.
and she
And
doesn't have
then,
any prospect on life. Her life is kind of
yeah,
going nowhere.
exactly. So the only thing that she's got going in her life is really just trying to keep her family going, and then one day eventually get them out of the deep freeze, so she can be rejoined with them again. So that's what ultimately puts her up for the gig. Um, we kind of keep cutting back to that other space story, and ultimately what we find out is um, there is a kind of like a motherhood, and then that unknown force that was technologically advanced that we originally saw, and they are in a cat and mouse hunt on trying to get this very abstract uh, egg from the motherhood, so they can hatch it. And it seems like what will be inside the egg is the Messiah. And ultimately, what we come to is the motherhood tricks them into thinking that they do have the egg, but really they've taken a specimen from it, kind of put it inside of themselves to preserve it, and go as far, far away as they can from the unknown brooding force. And ultimately says, hey, maybe there's more. Maybe we have a better opportunity if we kind of embrace scarcity, because scarcity usually breeds innovation. So they go down to one mother. She takes the specimen. They kind of create a super egg. It's very abstract. And she basically begins to sit. And finally, all the while, Nora begins her schooling, slowly continues to get better and better, until finally um, she meets a kill that she can rise to the challenge on. And that kind of catches us up on all 5 issues that have been out so far.
Yeah, that's a pretty concise synopsis. Well done. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, I was trying to keep up with the books. I only have, unfortunately, Skip and I both have these physical copies, and I didn't have any digitals. Well, I do have a digital, but I technical issues wasn't able to share. So we're just showing some of the artwork off here in Comixology, that it shows some of the preview pages, and you can see, like what I'm showing here is some kind of a montage of Niha going through her assassin school. Um, and I really, oh man, I really like this last issue, Skip.
Hmm.
um,
It was good. What were some of the highlights, of it that kind of stood out to you?
I think some of the highlights that stood out for me is that it's, well, I mean, why it was grabbing me, it wasn't a
Mhm.
specific like, ooh, this happened in the book. It was more of the book is coming together as far as like these characters and like giving me a reason to like sort of care about them, and not just sort of being abstract instruments of plot, that Hickman seems to be manipulating pieces on the board, and you're like,
Right.
okay, I don't know who any people are, but I'm engaged because this is a very interesting story and what's going on, and that's what he kind of does is he grabs you and goes, what's going on. You got to and trying to figure it out is interesting. But now this Neha character, who honestly I did like her from the beginning. I liked her attitude and her personality. But we see here as an example, she's going through her training, and there's I think like four candidates in the training, and all the other three are super badass. Like they've killed people before. They're like all-star recruits, right? They got drafted in because they were all state champions. And Neha is like living on the streets. She's never killed anyone. And this other woman's like, yeah, come with me. I'm going to make you into something. And so the other assassins at the school are just like, why her? Like, what the hell? Like, is this a joke? And we see this montage here where she's each 3-row panel, she's fighting one of the other. There's this alien that looks like a crane, like part crane bird, the bird. And then there's this other one that's kind of a crustacean looking alien. And then there's the third one who looks more of like your cyberpunkish futuristic alien woman. And she goes, like, look at her stance, like you see in the first panel. Like, she obviously doesn't know how to fight. She just gets her butt whooped and she's here bleeding. And in the second row, she faces the crustacean thing and just mashes her. Now she's just sitting in a pool of blood. I mean, she's just getting pummeled.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of is, wow, I really appreciate that she's not, and this is
perfect.
Really bad. Yeah, I really appreciate she's not some sort of Mary Sue character. But in true fashion, I predicted the book. Like, and I was like, oh, I bet you this is what's going to happen. And it did. But that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes giving you what you want is good. And Hickman, man, when he's on his game, he knows when to give you the treats. He's like, oh, is this the treat you've been waiting for? Oh, okay, here you go. You can have a little bit. And he repeats this montage that I can't show him, but this one here, where the next time on the first panel, she fights the crane lady. I forget, these have weird alien names. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But she wins. She kicks her in the face and like knocks her down or whatever. And she's like, oh, she's got a happy feeling. And then she fights the crab thing and it lays her out. And then the other lady, the cyber girl, clocks her again too. Like, but you can see like progress. And then in the third one, she comes and she beats the crane thing again, then beats the crustacean thing again. And she's like, yeah, I'm getting better. And then the cyber woman like knocks her out, And it shows, it's a really cool way because the whole premise of the current book is year one. And I saw that, and I'm like, as a Frank Miller fan, I'm like, oh, how dare you use year one? But Hickman, to his credit, one of the things I'm always like, ooh, Hickman is wanting to stretch a story out for eons, And it's like, no, we're gonna get through year one in one issue. This is boom. Here's her training. Boom, boom, boom. Go, go, go. And I'm like, yeah, because I obviously I want to see the development of this character, and also the highlight for me was. At the school, I don't think we're going to see it in the graphics that I have here, but her mentor, what's her name, Skip? She has like a real...
Madam Morley.
Madam Morley, yes. Madam Morley, who you could see here, she's on this first cover here. I'll show you guys a picture. Madam Morley is the prime assassin or whatever. She's the one that recruited her, this girl, lady in black. And she's got a rival at the school. And that's, I'll show you, click here. This lady here with the weird rainbow kind of color. She's this big hulking brute of a woman. Yeah. And you kind of get the feeling that she's one of the best at the school. And there's a part where they almost throw down. And I just really liked the development of her and how she related to her peers, and that she wasn't also perfect, and that her peers didn't necessarily like her or agree with her, and she's trying to do something for this woman. There's this great line about, like, why are you helping me or something, where Neha says, it's like she says something like, oh, someone came along and once saved you. And Madam Morley's idea is that assassination isn't like, it's a vile thing, but if like left in the hands of like evil people, they're monsters. Like, and anyone
Right.
can just kill, but assassination is a different thing entirely, and it should be done by people who do value life and do believe in order and stuff, because otherwise you just have rampant murderers and stuff like that. And it's an interesting
Right.
take. And nowhere in this book, by the way, this is not a superhero book, right? So when I read these type of books, some of my limiters, go off, because when I read Superman, he's got to be a hero. Like, there's
Right.
rules.
Yep.
Here, I'm just reading a sci-fi book. No one's obligated to be a paragon of virtue here. Um,
Right.
and I just really liked that we were taking, the first four issues, all this plot of the sisterhood versus these weird alien guys that look like monoliths. And they're taking over the galaxy. And there's a lot of little, like, Hickman's fave, like, white pages. We haven't covered. We're not going to go over. You should read the book and go over themselves. Some people roll their eyes when they see that, but there's a whole universe that Hickman's building here. I mean, this is it's a gigantic space opera of sorts, and he's crammed it into 5 issues so far, and there's so much information. And those first 4 issues was kind of that, like, information dump in a way, where you're just like, I got to set everything up. I got to explain everything, what everything is. And this issue
Right.
felt like, okay, now we can get on to, you're ready for the rest of the story. You kind of
Yes.
get what's going on. And I'm like, yes. And so when this issue ended, we didn't get to see Niha's total progression. It just sort
Right.
of, I think did it end on year 2?
We got to year 3, and year 3 was kind of like her final form, or her final progression as far as this chapter is concerned. She finally got to, after going to 2 years and having 2 contracts, as someone who's still going through the program, where she had opportunities to kind of, get a kill under her belt, so to speak. She
Ah,
just wasn't able to. So finally, in year 3, she was able to.
that's right. Year 1 was the training. Year 2 was the ride along, where she went on and
Right.
actually had to get a kill under her
Yep.
belt. And it takes you full circle back to issue 1, back to the
Yes.
guy who, which she was working for,
Yep.
and the assassin came and all this stuff. And it was a nice kind of circular revolution. And by the end of this issue, we see that Niha is now forever changed, and the
Yep.
story is gonna go forward on. She's on her journey. She's like Luke Skywalker has now left Tatooine.
Yep.
Like, and I'm very interested to see where this goes. I love Hickman's world building. I love this world. Is fascinating. It's like no world I've ever seen. I mean, there's echoes of things that are common in sci-fi, fantasy, weird, but it truly feels original. And there's so many little subplots and things going on with, like, what's this egg? What are the sisterhood doing? Who are they? Are they even the good guys? Don't even know. Maybe the other guys
Right.
hunting them are the good guys. Who? It's man, I love this book. I've talked too much. You tell me what's highlighted for you.
You touched on a lot of things. I'm very much big on the intrigue that's being built. I like that there's a part that is very much kind of carved out for us, where we have Niha, we've got Madame Morley. I don't even know if we got her name, but we got the lady that was kind of like the lead admin of the school, that her and Morley had that very apparent tension, with, and everything, which was such a great scene. We've got all those people, so we have people that we can follow along and be very familiar with. But then we have a whole other side of the story that's extremely abstract. We don't have that much information about it. It very, very much has us. It had me like looking in every single corner of every single panel. Flipping back and forth between pages and just trying to glean as much information as I could out of there. And honestly, I got to the point where I said, you know what? I was never frustrated, but I just said, you know what? I like, it's very obvious that I'm supposed to feel this way and be asking these questions on these people. And I'm completely going to lean in to, the palpable mystique of everything that's going on here. And especially how the art was laid out. Um, especially on that part throughout that, it was it just pulled me in. And then, like I said, we've got Madam Morley, who I very, very much liked right out of the gate. As someone who, it's no secret to anybody who has listened to me anywhere when I talk about indies, East of West is my favorite comic book series ever. My favorite writer and my favorite artist got together and made a book. And there's a character named Archibald Chamberlain who is like that southern, silver tongued devil, and he very much speaks with those southern sensibilities, and very all the subtleties, and his lips are dripping, with essentially deceit, while he's also complimenting you and propping you up. He's gonna slide that knife in your back ever so gently, and lay your body down to bleed out. She had some of those qualities, but not exactly the same person, and I really appreciated that. Though he wanted to continue that theme, he also didn't make it just like the same note before. So that was really awesome. Of course, I love the way she speaks. I've already mentioned how the weapon that she used in the beginning was very cool. I remember when issue number 1 came out, and everybody talked about the white pages or the food brochure. I don't know. I like ramen, man. So I was I was into that. But something else that was really interesting, and I don't always pay the biggest attention to this, but when you have a writer like Hickman, like Nick Fury said, you always got to keep one eye open. So I went back and I actually took notes, and I always put the title of the issue on there, because we don't always get titles, issue 1, issue 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very cool how those the title, did serve a very good purpose, and kind of, something very important, or something that got laid out in the book that was really cool. So as people are reading along, I'm not going to rifle through all of those, but as you read this book, if you do jump on this ride with us, after you note the title, read the book, because you will get the title, and then go back and then read the title again. And it is always a nice cycle to loop back around and be like, wow, that's very detailed. That's, leaving no stone unturned, and really having intention, with naming things, and then everything that you set up, and, you set up all the pins and you knock them down. So, so much about this book, but I love Hickman. That's no secret. He can do wrong. He's not a perfect writer.
He certainly can.
Absolutely. But I really, really, really have to tip my hat, and I really, really want to prop up Mike Huddleston on this. Please, if nothing else, please pick up the book. You've seen some of what Ash has shown us. Look at some of those other pages, because those art styles change as the story goes, and they don't always return back like the same art style for this group of people or that group of people. He uses his change of analog art, like early storyboarding art, where some of the blue inks and stuff like that are still in there, like the skeletons of what he's drawing, all the way over to like half analog, half digital, and then full digital. And he takes advantage of how those different mediums, can bring about a different feeling and a different vibe. I will go on record saying this over and over again. I feel like this book should cost more money. The amount of intention, the amount of attention, and just the level of the craft. This is one of those books where you grab them and it's like, what is the state of the art? Like in comics, what is pushing it and quality at the same time? It is a book like this, everyone.
Well, this is a part where Skip and I don't always fully agree. I don't think the book should cost more. However, I will agree that this book does make me feel like I get my money's worth every time.
Indeed.
For $3.99, you get a book, and you get those white pages, and I used to poo-poo them on the X-Men stuff, and the main X-Men books I still do. But when Hickman's doing it here, first of all, he's not subtracting from the page count of story. These are all additive. So if you just blew past them, you'd still be getting your full page count of story. All of it is purely additive, extra bonus stuff. And when I think about it, in the beginning, I kind of rolled my eyes on the whole ramen thing that appeared in issue 1. But in hindsight, there's no ads in this book. And, I'm okay with ads, but this is kind of like a fake ad. Like, it was an ad that fit in the Decorum world. And I was
Right.
like, oh. And as I started thinking about that, I was like, it's just pure flavor. Not everything needs to be mind blowing. Like, oh my God, I just read this thing and it just, no, it just. And as the book has been coming out and as I've been reading it, another big thing is the Huddleston art that you mentioned. At first, it really threw me off on how it varies. You'll get, like example here, where the art feels very raw. It feels like some pencils and some basic inks, basic colors. Look at this. I mean, this is like 4-color coloring, from like 40 years ago.
Right.
It's no backgrounds, just very, very basic stuff. And then you'll turn the page and boom, big full color splash, painted. And it's gorgeous. I mean, to me, this is gorgeous. This is like something I want to put a print up on my wall of this spaceship book, like, and it's at first it's jarring. You're like, wait a minute, why can't the whole book be like this?
Right.
But I think Hickman, to his credit or his demise, is trying to do something different, not just for being different's sake, but he's trying to not just work within the confines of how we all know a comic must be done every single time. Here's paint by numbers,
Right.
And what I'm noticing now that I've read 5 issues, is this very much feels manga influenced. It feels
absolutely.
it feels like it's not. It doesn't have the Japanese culture part of manga, but it has it almost like as if an American artist was trained in manga, but then came over to the States and did like American comics. Because manga does this all the time too, where you'll get like some full color pages and it's real nice, and then all of a sudden, some of the little cutesy scenes that are supposed to just be like a little like, aha, wasn't that a funny little cute line? But it's not really quintessential to the drama of the story. And it'll just be like real rough sketch, or especially if the character's doing some like funny little face, they'll just draw like a little cartoon face. Manga's just notorious for that, and it's normal. Like if you read manga, you're not like, oh, what the hell are they doing? In comics, so we go, whoa, that's different. That's not, I guess, against the rules. And as I'm reading this book and as I'm getting used to it, I'm really appreciating it. There was a lot of scenes where we communicated Niha's emotions and her journey through this assassin school just through a simple panel of her making a weird dumb manga face. And it would be easy on the surface to dismiss it and be like, oh God, they're copying. But it's not. It really does work. And it helps to accelerate the story. We don't need to sit here and have, 100 word balloons from Bendis. Just boom, we just move on and we get it. And just, it's all about the story. And I'm loving it. I'm loving where the story is. And I'm so excited for this next issue, because this one left me the most hanging of the previous issues, where I'm like, God, I want to read it now.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we started. I think for time constraints, we're not going to do any theory crafting really today, because you guys are just jumping on with us too. So I think it's best, if you probably agree, Skip, we just kind of throw this out here, give this introduction, let it sort of simmer, and we'll pick up then on the next Decorum episode with some theory crafting on issue 6, and give you guys some chance to pick up the books if you're interested. You can get them on Comixology if you're okay with digital books, because it's a good idea, because they're half price. A month after the book comes out, the book is half price. Also, Image does a really good thing that when the arc is over and the new book of the next arc comes out, they release the trade simultaneously. I'm betting dollars to donuts that issue 5 was the last of that arc, and that there'll be a trade for Decorum 1 through 5. And so if people go out and pick up issue 6, that's a great, get a trade, get issue 6, or whatever you people want to do. We're going to start theory crafting. We'll probably do it behind the scenes, but we'll do it on camera here, or on the radio, or however you want to call it, on the next one. Man, I can't talk. I've been drinking too much. Episode 1, if we treat this as episode 0, will be out in 2 weeks on a Monday, and we're going to launch with Firepower. We're not really going to talk about the book here today, but just to give you advance notice, there are 4 issues of Firepower out, plus a trade paperback that I urge you to read. I have done a full video on it that does not spoil the book. If you want to check out that video for yourself and see if it gives you any inclination, it is 160 pages, 8 comics worth of material. Cover price is $9.99. Comixology has it on sale right now for $3.59. It's less than a comic. So pick this up, and then there's just, you go to your local store, support them. You can get Firepower. There's 4 issues that are currently out. So it's not hard to collect at all. We're going to launch that a week from, 2 weeks from today.
Yep.
And I can't wait. This is the opposite book. If you're like, I don't want the hard, crunchy Hickman sci-fi that makes my brain hurt, I just want fun, Spider-Man type fun, this is the book for you. All right.
I fully agree.
Moving on. Segment 2 for our show. We're gonna kind of do briefly today because it's all introductions to the pilot. But section 2 is going to be, or segment 2, is where we're going to talk about other books we're reading, but not necessarily devoting for the show. It may be a book that we read and we're not going to read anymore, or it might be a book that we're reading but the other person doesn't read. So this is going to be an opportunity for myself or Skip to try to sway the other person and be like, yo, why aren't you not reading this? And you guys too. By all means, put in the comments indie books that we should be checking out. But this week I had an opportunity to read Department of Truth by James Tynion IV. And I did a video on this, and iPad didn't record it. So I don't have a video. I'm debating on redoing it again, but it takes a lot of your energy out of it. But I'm going to give you a basic description about this book right now.
Please.
This is a book that takes the idea, what if conspiracy theories were true, right? So right on the cover, you can kind of see it's got the JFK. And the idea starts off with this guy, this blonde-haired guy and this black girl, and they're driving, and he's about to throw up, and he becomes kind of the main character. He kind of gets recruited into this whole thing, this secret, beyond secret organization. If you've ever watched X-Files and you remember the character, the Smoking Man, that is heaps and spades. Like is this book is like that. It's like the Smoking Man. It's like the secret of secret agencies, and this idea that that conspiracy theories are true. Like, what if the world was flat? What if, what if the moon landing was a fake? And different things like that. But it throws a twist in there that I didn't see coming. Okay. It explains it in a way that I was like, oh, okay. And because this is a book I'm not going to continue reading, I'm not going to spoil this one. Okay. I'm not going to continue reading purely because it wasn't for me and because I have a budget on books that I'm going to read. So this one, sorry, didn't make the cut, but that doesn't mean to say that this isn't something other people wouldn't enjoy. It is very much, if you like that idea, if you like X-Files, this type of stuff, especially the Smoking Man type, agenda. You like the fact that there's some non-science at play. Okay. The reason why these conspiracy, just to give a little hint at a spoiler, is because it's a non-scientific reason of why these work. And so this group is kind of out to stop things. There is a little bit of political leaning, and that's kind of the reason why I got out of it, because it did seem to bring a little bit of Tynion's politics into the book unnecessarily. Okay. But it's still an interesting book. You can see the art on the cover. But yeah, I urge people to at least check out issue 1 for yourself and see if it's for you, because Tynion is a good writer. There is a lot in here to like, and that's my thoughts on it. And What do you buy, you Skip? What do you think, just based on what I said and what you've seen of the cover, or tying in, or do you have any thoughts?
Kind of to Helam kind of pointed it out in the chat, just saying that the interesting premise, is kind of jumping out to him. Same with me. I'm someone who has gone down the YouTube rabbit hole many times and very early on in the years of YouTube, checking out all these different conspiracy theories and things like that. Of course, I'm much out of the phase of being overly interested in them, but with that history and then the twist that you say that they put on it and whatnot, I'm quite interested in it. And then looking at the art too, a bit of a different style, kind of going along a bit of a not so common kind of abstract thing. The art is catching me as well. I can't tell you how many hours I have put into looking into the whole JFK assassination thing with the magic bullet and all these different angles. So and I'm not a big Tynan fan. I just think he's fine for the most part. So you kind of sold me. I'm gonna grab issue number 1. Yeah.
All right. Well, LK says, so you're saying it's not poorly written, but just didn't go in a direction you liked. For sure, it's not poorly written. I think I'm going to try to do a review on it to give it more attention. This show's really not meant to do reviews of books, but just to be real quick, it didn't. I didn't like the idea that it interjected current culture war ideas into these other it didn't feel necessary. I would have just liked that to be left out and just keep in the JFK assassinated, the moon landing, flat earth, whatever else the people are lizards, deal with all that stuff. Don't throw in the current culture stuff. It just took me out of the story. It didn't do it in heaps and bounds. It wasn't like it didn't just make me want to rip the comic up. I did enjoy my time with the comic. It does have a pretty cool reveal ending, like twisty, plotty type stuff. Like I said, a lot of people are going to just check out the first issue. If this is something you're like, ooh, this sounds really interesting, it is well written. Tynan's a good writer, and this is among his better writing. Like, there's good dialogue. You're not going to get the Bendis-y, Tom King stuff. It flows, and like I said, if it was trash, I wouldn't even have talked about it here today. It wouldn't even made the cut. But it does deserve some attention. Just something I'm not going to allot my $4 to every month. That's all. But Skip may love it. He may be trying to woo me back in a month.
Who knows?
Who knows? All right, so that's just to kind of give you guys an introduction of what that segment's going to be. Usually it's going to be comics that we're already reading and we love, and we're just going to, I'm going to try to get Skip onto the Oblivion Song bandwagon if I have to do some occultic rituals. I don't know. Do something. Some blood ritual. I don't know. Anyways.
I'll do my best to not have you resort to such matters.
So the final segment of our show that we've outlined is, we call it Book of the Week, even though it's a bi-weekly show. Book of the bi-week. And this is where we're going to do is get on a book that's already come out. It's not current. But the cool thing about independent books is, they kind of live on like manga. You don't have to get a manga. It's like, oh, it's cutting edge. It's coming out right now. There's great mangas that have come out and they finished. But you can go and pick them up and read them from the beginning and enjoy them just like anyone else did. But the idea is that with this show, one of the appeals we talked about before is reading current books. One of the added bonuses, the cherry on top, if you will, is getting to join in that hype with everyone else. Everyone else is reading. Oh, did you read the latest issue? Oh my God, you see what happened? It's harder to do that with a book that came out 5 years ago because everyone's like, I read that. You're late to the party. So here we're trying to get the party. It's like a new party for latecomers. And you're going to get to enjoy, at least me for sure, I'm going to be new to the book. So you're going to have at least one person, if not also Skip, kind of being new, and hopefully other people in the chat will be new to the book, and we'll get to have our own new water cooler talk as if the book was coming out brand new. Except we're going to do trade at a time instead of issue at a time. And for the pilot episode, we didn't want to jump in and give you guys no notice of what we're doing. So we did a smaller book. It's easy to get easy to get into, and Skip recommended me Pulp. And I've had a couple of other people in the chat recommend Pulp to me as well, and I was like, that sounds perfect. So Skip, tell us a little bit about Pulp, if you would.
Absolutely. Pulp, put together by easily one of my favorite teams in comics, Ed Brubaker of the Winter Soldier fame, and Sean Phillips, who had carved out his own thing, but I do feel like majority of what we know him from is his work with he and Ed Brubaker. It is really cool. As an added bonus, we get Jacob Phillips as the colorist, so you get a bit of synergy that you don't normally get where you have artists that are related, whether it's like the Dodsons, a husband and wife crew. In this case, it's a father and son crew, which is really cool. And Sean has branched out, and or excuse me, Jacob has branched out and is actually doing pencils and colors on another book, and we may be talking about that at some point in time. But I figure I'll give you guys a little bit of what this book is about. So right on the back here we have, what do you do when you expected to die young but somehow didn't? Max Winter used to have a different name and a different life a long time ago. Now, in 1930s New York, Max survives by writing thinly disguised tales of the man he used to be for the pulp magazines. Tales of the forgotten frontier and a Wild West outlaw dispensing justice with a six gun. But as his life begins to crumble and he watches the world move to the brink of war, with Nazis marching across Europe and in the streets of New York City, Max finds himself thinking like an outlaw again. And once he starts down that path, there may be no way back. So that kind of gets you right in, like it does more than wet your whistle. Ash, you heard all of us talking about it. You heard me talking about it. I might be talking about Brubaker these days more than I even talk about Jonathan Hickman. What did you like about Pulp?
Oh man, what didn't I like about Pulp? First of all, I hear you. It's right. That's a good setup here. You guys talk about Brubaker as if he was the Messiah. I hear so many people, Brubaker. And, I'll be honest. I read recently the Captain America Winter Soldier on my live stream. And, that Breen hypes up quite a bit. And it was good. It was genuinely good. But it wasn't like earth-shattering, like, oh my God, this is the best Captain America story I've read. That hype has a tendency to cloud things and sort of set you up for a fall. Sometimes when you hype things up too much, no matter how good it is, it just doesn't live up.
True.
So I was worried about that. I was worried about reading Pulp because it's like everyone's talking about it, and I was worried about reading and going, yeah, it was pretty good, and again, it's a Western. I didn't actually know the things you read on that synopsis there, by the way. I tend to not read those first when I go in. So I didn't know about the Nazi element when I started reading the book. All I knew is what this cover was. I'm like, it's a Western. The Westerns are okay, but I like a good Western movie. I was like, but a comic? I don't know. But man, this book moved me. And on the surface, like when I look at this first page here, it just looks like a real basic, like old school Western comics. But of course, that's the point. What we're looking at here is not the actual comic. It's the comic within a comic. This is the comic that the main character draws, because the main character is a comic creator himself. He writes, and here he is. Here's an old man. And he writes these comics. And this book takes place in 1939. And, the world's going through some things. And he's kind of getting jacked off by his employer here. He writes here, he goes, six gun Western is what he writes. And he's just getting jacked off because this is what happened back in those times. And what hit me about this book, besides it being a great emotional journey of this character, was it was also a nice kind of callback to comic history, like how the old school Golden Age guys got ripped off, Simon and Schuster, Gil Kane and Bob Finger, I think.
Bill Finger.
Bill Finger. Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Sorry, I mixed those. Brain's gonna slap me. You know, a lot of these Golden Age guys, they got ripped off, and this is kind of a similar situation. They kind of little callback to that. Ed Brubaker is obviously aware of this time period, and we see this man. He's just come at the end. He's at the end of his life, essentially. He's just an old man. He's like probably 70 years old, and you know, he's had multiple heart attacks, and he's just on the street, and these hooligans are bothering this woman, I think it was. And just because of his way he was brought up and his stuff, he can't stand down where everyone else does. And he stands up to him, and of course they kick his ass because he's an old man. He's not. This isn't superhero comics. This is real out. You know, it's not reality, but it's realism. Brubaker very much keeps us grounded in that. Then we get these flashbacks to these comics that this character Red, what was his name? Red. Was it Red River?
Red River Kid.
Red River Kid, yeah. And, you know, these are the stories he tells, and flashes back again to his life. And, you know, we see he got married to a cleaning lady that he met in one of his buildings. And this is be a big spoiler, guys, by the way. If you have not read this book, you kind of just need to stop now. Go get this book, and then this video will be on repeat. You know, listen to it. If you're having it on a podcast form, pause it. Just get this book. But suffice it to say, he kind of goes back to his old ways. He's realizing this woman that he loves is I think it's his third wife. He's gonna leave her with nothing. He's had multiple heart attacks. He's barely making ends meet. When he got mugged or he got beat up there, they took his money. So all the money he made from the comic book was gone. And I got to tell you, Skip, I mean, I'm not as old as this guy, but I can start to relate now as I'm past the half year way, you know, like the middle age part. You start to look at life very much differently. When you're young, you're like, everything's the future. Everything's ahead of you. But this guy, he realized everything's behind him, and he just wants to do one last thing. And not really for him. It's not out of greed. He's going to rob this armored car, because we find out that the Red River Kid, is actually based on him. That this is a life that he lived, 40 something years ago. But as times have changed, right? The West is done, but he still has it in him, and he's going to rob this thing. And all of a sudden this guy approaches him. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, they're going to kill you." And he's like, "Who the hell are you?" Well, it turns out this guy is one of the Pinkertons who chased him all throughout the country and down into Mexico when he was an outlaw. Except this guy's been kind of outed by the Pinkertons, and so he's kind of down on his luck. And so he turns to Red and he's like, "I want you to help me do a robbery." And it's like, "What?" And so the story kind of goes weird south, and it's on the surface as you're reading it, it seems like a very basic kind of like robbery movie, kind of this crime drama. But what I really liked, well, I mean, there's so many things I really liked, but it was found very interesting was the Nazi angle. Because in the 1930s, a lot of people don't know this, unless you lived this time or you read beyond what you were taught in school. The Nazis were in America. Like a lot of the liberals in America supported the Nazis, because we weren't yet at war with them. They were just a rival political faction. The world didn't view the Nazis the way they view them today. No one knew that they were sending, the Holocaust. It was a much different world. And so the Nazis are in here, and this guy, this Pinkerton, is a Jew. And he's got his own reasons for wanting to stop them. And he tells River, "Hey, or Red, not River. They got this thing of money that they shipped to Germany," and he basically convinces them to do this job. But of course, the job, like a good reveal, a good twist in the plot, it was kind of a ruse. He kind of tricked him. There was no money. And it was all just like pamphlets. This group here is just spreading propaganda. They're not sending money. But the Pinkerton, he's going after his own things. He's looking for their accounting books and different things like that.
Yep.
And so they have to get out of there with their lives. You get this nice old school kind of mafioso, if you remember like Goodfellas type of, not Goodfellas,
Yeah.
sorry, the Untouchables.
The Untouchables.
Yeah, it kind of
Oh, that
reminded me a lot of
scene.
that, like that sort of,
Absolutely.
yeah, and there's some action scenes. We get a story of Red through his comic books, and once you know that this character is based off of the main character, they start to have more resonance because you're like, oh, this isn't just a fictional character. This is the character we're reading, who of course is a fictional character. So it's like a story within a story, and it's so layered. And meantime, he had his third heart attack, I believe it was, and the story comes around full circle because at the beginning we see him kind of dying, and he's like, "Let me tell you the story of how I, almost died the third time or whatever." And so this is it, and it kind of resolves where this Pinkerton guy kind of comes through at the end with
Mm-hmm.
with all the information that they were able to get on the Nazis or whatever. He was able to use it and indict them and do different things. And he all that Red ever wanted to do was like give his wife her dream, which was to have a little house in Queens so she could visit, have her grandkids visit stuff. And so he's able to buy this house for her. And kind of it chokes me up. I mean, just reading it's way more powerful than me describing it. But if anyone has seen movies, like this reminded me of two of my favorite movies, Unforgiven by Clint Eastwood, and also Gran Torino by Clint Eastwood. Thematically, very, very similar. Two characters at the end of their life trying to do, one last thing that's meaningful. And it just was a powerful. When I closed this book, I was like, this got to be a movie. If I could just get Clint Eastwood to be in one more movie, if Clint Eastwood could direct this movie and star in it as Red, like, it's a beautiful thing. It's just, yeah, he goes at the end here because his life is over. His wife has got the comfy, the house so she can see her grandkids, and this character who roughed up this girl or whatever, he's this Nazi guy, beats up his sister and stuff. He shows up at the Nazi bar. And he's like, "You him? What? Who's asking?" A friend of, oh, this is the guy that killed the Pinkerton guy, because the Pinkerton guy got killed for doing what he did. So now he avenges him. Oh, it's just a beautiful story about how enemies come back together, and I'm sure, Skip, there's more you can maybe elaborate on, but it ends in a tragic way, but a tragedy that feels heartfelt. Like that's powerful writing when you can end a book like you see here with blood and everyone dead, but yet you feel and like something good happened. I don't know. Maybe you can be more eloquent than me.
No, I mean, no, you're hitting on a lot of the notes, and that's the thing that I really enjoy about Ed Brubaker. Like as visceral as he can get, as gritty, he balances it out with like how heartfelt things can be and how he ties the relationships together. And that was one of the main things, especially the Pinkerton. They had set up a lot of tension between them. How I mean, like the Pinkerton had actually killed one of the guys in his crew, like as they were getting away, because he asked him like, what's the closest you ever got to us? It's like, that one time I took your friend out. He's like, oh, we all hated that guy,
Right,
like,
right,
like
yeah.
they even like, Brubaker even masterfully put in ways like that a bond could be formed, under these circumstances. Of course, there was a situation that Red or Max was in where he was down on his luck. He needed the money, and he didn't want to leave his last wife without anything. So there was that angle where he had offered him the money, and then like Ash said, come to find out when they go and they do the hit, that the money wasn't there. Brubaker also did a really good job of setting up that guy that was part of the Nazis, but the main reason why the Pinkerton guy even got the information is because that guy was roughing up that girl, his sister. So the Pinkerton guy didn't like him for that, and had a personal reason as well as a larger personal reason, the whole Nazi faction thing and him being Jewish, that set that up. But the killer thing was, after the Max didn't trust the Pinkerton guy fully. They formed a bond, but he said, you don't trust him. And then when he lied to him about the money being there, he's like, dang it. But the Pinkerton guy came through. He's like, yeah, sorry, sorry I lied to you. If I didn't, you wouldn't have done the hit. But here's the deed, and a bank account that has over $8,000 in it. Which was such a blessing because he was down to his last $40 to his name, and that's what enabled them to get the house that he wanted to get his wife out in Queens. But the twist came back around that the Nazi guy was beating on his sister again. The Pinkerton guy finally just went to the door to confront him because they had already gotten the names and all the things that they needed to do to indict that party. So now he wouldn't blow his cover by just going and confronting the guy, and the guy pushed him over a stair rail. So Red goes and he sees the Pinkerton guy being pulled out, and they said, oh, he slipped and fell down the stairs. And he went and he asked his sister, like, don't lie to me. And she was like, if I tell you, he'll kill me. He said, just tell me. And that sets up the final scene where, like, since the Pinkerton guy had looked out for him and got him the money with the bank account so he can take care of his wife, he was
Right.
like, all right, I'm about to go get revenge for my friend. And that it set it up very, very, very well.
Yes, this is again, it reminded me of Unforgiven, the ending of Unforgiven and Gran Torino, where the character's like, look, I've completed all the things in my life. This is now my ending. And he gets to go out his way, and it's powerful. And it's, I hate to say this in like a positive thing. I shouldn't have to, but for me it matters. Like, this is a really masculine book. It's like very a man's like, these aren't little, like, no, this is, and I just want to read, if indulge me for a second, I want to read like one of the things that I loved in the writing, so you can get a feel of how Brubaker, his narration, he writes in here, he's like, I always made me and her Uncle Spike out like we were somehow the good guys, like Robin Hood of the frontier. And when I write my stories, I do the same thing, partly because it's like I'm still talking to her, but I'm surrounded by all my other ghosts who know the truth. We weren't heroes. We were killers. That's the reason we survived so long ago. Because this world belongs to the monsters. But Jeremiah was right about one thing. It shouldn't. And that's kind of sums up the story for me. Jeremiah was the Pinkerton guy. It's like, look, we recognize that the monsters run the world and stuff. It's not about that. It's about recognizing what should or shouldn't be. And this Red character, he knows he's a monster, and he knows he shouldn't be a monster. But that's what made him survive, and that's what enables him to do the things that he does. He knows, he goes out with a bang. The monster in him is killed as well, and his wife gets to live on with their grandkids and hopefully a better world. There's just so much to this book. I can't encapsulate it. Like, I feel like I'm in trying to describe it, I'm missing so much. So even though I've spoiled this, if you haven't read it, guys, it's worth reading. The writing is so good. It just flows off the page, and it just feels, it's so, the name Pulp, it's obviously hearkening back to the old Pulp comics that he wrote, but it's also fitting because this is very much a pulp fiction story in itself. It's very, like Pulp Fiction. This could be a Tarantino movie if it wasn't a Clint Eastwood movie. Of course, it's neither, but I can dream. I loved reading this. Just hearing the voice in my head, that pulp noir fiction. Like, it's Ed Brubaker. My hat's off to you. Even though this book was completely hyped to me, it did not let me down, and it felt the right length. Like, I read it in one sitting. It's not terribly long, but it's not short. And it moved me. Like, it choked me up when I got to the end. I was like, oh my God. So I am very glad that I did this. I hope everyone else gets to enjoy this book. It's going to be one of those things, again, it kind of, might fall down the memory hole because it's just a little graphic novel that people go, oh, whatever, it's about cowboys, and it's so much more than that.
So much more. And I'm very happy that and pleased that you know really felt attached to it, because when you had mentioned something about how the callback to the creators, that Finger, Kirby, and all of those. There's an even bigger nod that Brubaker wrote during it. Actually was like right in the middle of the Cruel Summer uh storyline, which was his last criminal storyline, and it's called Bad Weekend, and it is literally a love letter to comic book fans and creators. And being that you got into this, that one is even more of what you felt. So we may bring it onto the show, we may not, we'll see. But now that I got Ash kind of hooked, I'm going to get him over to that. And if any of you have read the Bad Weekend storyline, that was issue number 2 and 3 of Criminal, you yourselves know. And if you haven't, do yourself a favor, because it is very much a book that Ed Brubaker wrote for you, for us, the comic book fan, and especially the comic book creator. So yeah, Ash, we'll talk about that one more. But yes, Pulp, everybody, please check it out if you haven't. Breen will tell you, who's in the chat. It is it is just a very remarkable book, and you can easily take Ash's word for it as well.
Yeah, I would tell you if it sucked. Man, you guys know me. Here's the thing too. I've been saying all year, well, not all year, since I read it, that Firepower is the best thing I read all year. This might be better. This might be the best thing I read all year. It's very different than Firepower, and we'll get into that on the next episode, so I don't want to reveal too much, but this might be the best thing I've read all year and in some time. This is top notch, 5-star out of 5 stars, and I do not give those out liberally. I was really impressed with this book. This is a book that I'm going to come back to and read again. That's another thing, that not every book, even if they're good, do I want to necessarily read again. They're only good like the first time, and you're like, oh, okay, you got me. This is a book that it emotionally hooks you, and the journey is just as good as the reveal at the end. Like, I could sit here and talk about this book all night. I think I love this book, and I know a lot of other people that are following to do too. So they're sitting here going, "Yep," nodding your head, cool. Don't pass up this book. You can get it in hardcover if you're a person who likes it physical. It'd be a nice addition to your bookshelf. Dang.
It's so good. And as we're doing this live here on YouTube on Ash's channel, which is Ash on Comics, since we are so excited about it, after we wrap up the initial show, we might go into a little overtime, just to kind of really get with people in the chat, and maybe squeeze out a little bit more of that excitement that we have for the book. But everybody, thanks so much for joining us on the pilot episode 0 of the still unnamed indie comic show, with yours truly, Skip and Tosh, and my buddy Ash over here. The show will be returning in 2 weeks from today, which I don't have a calendar in front of me, but today is the 26th of October. So
it will be the 9th of November.
9th of November. So if you want to be with us live, which we really encourage, like we said, we're putting out some of the names of the books, like Firepower, which is going to be a definite for next time around. As Ash said, he's trying to get me on another Kirkman book and hook me in. He probably will. So you can definitely expect us to at least be talking about Firepower, as well as some additional indies that will other little titles that will slip in, just like Ash did with Department of Truth. And then we'll have another trade that we read in the last segment. So you guys can follow along with the main book that we talk at the beginning. You can follow along with the third book as well, and bring some suggestions as well when you come to the live show. We'd love to get more, and just kind of make this a thing. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, for joining us. Thanks everybody in the chat. Thank you who are listening via podcast. We really, 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 really appreciate it. And Ash, any final things before we send our podcast listeners off?
Oh yeah, we got to talk about on the next episode what we're doing for
Yep.
the
So we got
for the book of the week.
book of the week.
The big reveal book of the week.
Book of the week. Book of the week. We don't have music right now, but the
No.
book of the week is.
We are going through Skip's favorite book of all time, and a book that I have been promising to read for a long time. But I wanted to do it right, and just so many things have been coming in front of it, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like what is it, Providence? Like, I feel like this is all kind of worked out perfectly, because I know I've been saving this book for something important, and I've been wanting to read it, and I want to geek out on it. I'm sure Skip already does. It's his favorite book, so I'm sure he's looking for someone to be like, yo, what did you love about this book? So we're going to be going through East of West. You can get it on Comixology for, look at $3.59 for the first trade paperback right here. $3.59, less than the price of a comic book. You can get the first trade. All the trades are available on Comixology Unlimited. So if you just want to pay $5.99 a month, you can read all the unlimited books you want. So you don't even have to invest more than that if you don't want to, or you can buy them for $5 each. The first issue is completely free, whether you have unlimited or not. So I bought this whole series a couple months back. It was also available on Humble Bundle if you follow me. I was trying to get people to buy this whole series. If not, here's your chance to read it. We're going to be doing one trade every 2 weeks on this segment, and we're going to just geek out as if it were like a new book and be like, what happened in this particular trade? What do I think about it? You're going to get me as a new voice in on it, not knowing what the future holds. I'm not going to read ahead. So I'm going to, and hopefully be with you guys. If you've already read the books, obviously that's great. Come join us. If you haven't read the book, here's a time for you to jump on and read it new with other people reading it new, so you can share that excitement, enthusiasm, again, for a book that Skip thinks is one of the best books. And you've seen here, I mean, I can't argue. Everything puts in front of me, I'm like, this is gold. So I'm looking forward to this super much. This is the second half of the show for me, talking about the main book and then getting to go over this. Skip, do you have any things to say about this before we wrap it up?
I could never say enough. Like I said, my favorite writer, Jonathan Hickman. My favorite current writer, overall, it's Jim Starlin. But my favorite current writer, with my favorite artist, Nick Dragata, with one of my favorite colorists, Frank Martin Jr., and Russ Wooten, who did some really cool, incredible things with some of the lettering in this book, all coming together to create one of the most heartfelt stories, while still having all the cool, like, battles, fights, interesting characters, people coming in, people going out. Not everybody makes it to the end. Some people don't make it very far at all. It very much has that. People, it is a line drawn in the sand. People have to go, and they do go, and the way that they go is usually pretty glorious as far as just presentation. So yeah, check it out. Be here with us. I'm not going to say too much more because I don't want to overhype it. But yes, it is my favorite story of all time within comics. So I'm excited to share it with Ash and share it with all of you.
All right. So with that, I'm just going to say independent comics may not replace mainstream comics for you. And I can completely understand that. But don't let that keep you away from independent comics. There is some gold to be mined, and we're going to try to bring you some of the best to have fun with, geek out over. If we're talking about these books, mark my words, these are something special. We're not going to be bringing you half-baked nonsense, because we just don't have enough show to do that. There's hundreds of independent books that come out every month. We're only talking about a small handful, because those are the ones that capture our attention. And that's not to say they're the only ones that are worth attention, but that's just the ones that we're on. And we're going to hope to lure you in, and so you can geek out with us. Until next time, my name's Ash. There's Skip, and
Hey.